Recording started.
All right. Next up in the ethics track is a small little collection of Clover Park uh, instructors and their dean. We have Dr. Claire Korshanowski, Dean of the Manufacturing and Mechatronics program at our school. We've got Carl Wengren.
Hello.
I like this. Let me pin y'all to the main screen so that everybody continue. We've got Dr. Ken Meerdink.
That's me.
And we've got Joseph Ortiz.
Hey, everybody.
And they're going to tell us today, they're going to assure us that AI will not steal our job. But the caveat, a human using AI might do it. So I'm going to pass it on over to y'all. And I hope everybody enjoys this session.
That was a nice spin. That was a really nice spin.
Thank you, Ronald and Jeff, and welcome everybody. Absolutely, our talk today is about the future, that we should not fear AI, rather that we should be talking about how humans using AI can profoundly leverage their skills to be a game changer in the workforce. My name is Dr. Claire Korshanowski, and I'm facilitating the conversation today. And I'm joined by 3 faculty at Clover Park Technical College in our Center for Advanced Manufacturing and Industry 4.0. So we're going to run our session today a little bit like a podcast that you might see. The faculty will be asked questions and they might argue with one another, different perspectives. And then we too are going to also ask the audience, if you wouldn't mind, Ronald, if you could help us out by just kind of checking the chat, and those that are on Zoom on the other side there, feel free to type into the chat. We'll be looking at that during the conversation. We'll be asking you some questions along the way as well. So panelists and faculty, tell me, so we talk a lot about digitalism, we talk about AI, it is impacting you in your day-to-day and in your industry. So AI is not to fear, but a human using an AI will steal a job in the future. Do you sleep well at night with this idea? And Joe Ortiz, faculty in computer programming.
Yeah, I do sleep very well at night, knowing that. I teach computer programming, and a big topic around AI is code generation AI. A lot of people are saying I wouldn't become a programmer these days. The CEO of NVIDIA said something like that. I wouldn't go to college for computer programming anymore, which traditional computer programming, maybe not, but using some AI enhancements for sure. One eye-opening thing for me was probably almost 2 years ago now. One of my students, we were working on a client website, and I have a bunch of issues that they have to work on. And I was talking about one of these, and I said, I'm sorry, guys, we can't do this today. It's pretty complex, but we'll come back and talk about it. And just from teaching about 12 years here, I said, I don't think someone can do this alone, so we'll work on it together, and we'll come back and discuss it. And one of my students came back the next day and said, oh yeah, I got it working. And I was shocked. I said, how? And I wasn't trying to be mean or condescending. He was a great student, but I said, how'd you do it so fast? He said, oh, I use ChatGPT. And that got me about halfway there, and then I was able to fix the code and complete it. So just seeing students be more successful was a game changer for me. And AI really is a productivity booster. It's not going to replace us. I assure my students of that all the time. It's going to boost our productivity.
Carl, you teach in mechatronics, a vast industry on the cutting edge. Do you sleep well at night knowing that AI is here?
Oh, I sleep better for the same reason. So mechatronics, for anybody who's watching or listening that's not familiar, it's the synergy between electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, and software engineering sort of into one discipline. And I work primarily on sort of the platform industry 4.0 level here at Clover Park, and we build these AIs and train these AIs as part of the curriculum. And there's something that has been a transition for us over the last couple of years, is that we switch from an information basis to an application basis. And information is anything you can read watch, hear, and sort of process information wise. And the reason we do that is we've gotten a huge inflation in the value of information. So with the internet and how people perceive information, they're not willing to pay for it anymore. So that means that, I mean, from a college business model perspective or so, it doesn't work anymore for me to read out loud from a book. Whereas application is taking what you've read and then turning it into something of your own. An action in the world, a tangible thing. You took 5 pieces and came up with a 6th one that didn't previously exist. And the complexity of the world is such today that you need help. So a single person can do a single person's work. With automation and then with AIs, which to me is a form of automation, we can multiply a single person's efforts with, let's say, 1,000%, which is not unlikely. So you take one person and you get 1,000 persons productivity out of it. And that is very nice because that means that if I were to charge somebody for an hour of my time, I would have to match that to the value of that. And if I'm in demand, then a lot of people will be pulling on me. So I'm going to have to set the price accordingly. Now, if I can multiply myself 1,000 times, I also drop the price and the availability and thus making it more sort of democratically accessible for everybody to participate in my productivity. At the same time, I work because I get paid. So I have interest, I'm a human, I have things that are valuable to me. And working is not how I choose to define that. So people don't want to pay for information. They expect it to be free, which means that I have to present that in a way that it doesn't cost them what it takes me to do an hour. But if I can divide that by 1,000, I feel good about it.
That's why you sleep better.
100%, right? And also I'm allowed to sleep because we're about 2 million people short in industry. So US industry, in the manufacturing sector primarily, so we're missing 2 million people. So we have a lot of AIs to do before we even break even on the loss of productivity that we're currently facing.
Dr. Ken Meerdink, you have been a computer scientist. You have worked in industry and have also been a faculty member at multiple institutions for a while and teaching computer science and teaching technicians, computer scientists. Do you sleep well at night knowing AI? You've seen quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm so old, I started out with punch cards. And, we would write programs by hand on paper and then copy them onto punch cards and then feed them into a machine and wait an hour to see if the program ran. And so we now can do things in 1 second, what used to take me an hour to do. And I think AI is really going to improve that even further. And what it comes down to is that life for the actual programmer or computer scientist or software engineer or whatever you want to call them is improving because of this. And I reminded of when Carl said a 1,000 factor. I don't know if an acre was defined as the amount of space that a farmer could farm in 1 day back in the time. Now, an acre, people have 1,000-acre farms, or more, actually in Eastern Washington, right? They're even bigger yet.
Yeah.
So agriculture has done this. Everything has done this. AI is just going to improve computer programming and software, and then because software is everywhere, it's going to affect everything else as well. So yeah, I think we're headed into a better future.
Oh, excellent. Well, I'd like to turn over to the audience and please use the chat at this point. We'd like to hear from you. So AI is here for better, for worse, depending on your perspective. So question to you, is it better or worse to have a human that uses AI that will steal a job, or an AI itself in its own self steal a job? Love to hear your comments.
I
in
think
the
there's
audience.
already one up there, isn't
Okay,
there?
great.
Can you be overproductive? Can you be overproductive as in that you don't care about it anymore, or that
Well, I would think that was in the
Produce
term of bottlenecks. You produce too much and it can't be, it gets wasted. Maybe I got that wrong.
Yeah, I posted that comment. Yeah, I mean, if AI is going to increase productivity, do you get to a point where you can be overproductive, right? Because I mean, and I think also in terms of, I would also like to throw out why I have the microphone. In terms of thinking about like the meta crisis and the environmental crisis, we're framing a lot of this as just in terms of the impact on jobs, but there's also the larger environmental impact as well, especially with the farms that are running a lot of these applications, the amount of electricity and water they consume, and there's lots of downstream elements. So I guess that also speaks to productivity too. If we all start using these agents to decrease our workload or increase the amount of productivity we produce, what are the hidden costs of that we're not seeing?
Yeah.
Wonderful. I think I can take a stab at that.
Yeah.
So so the industry 4.0 perspective, that how it's different from what's been done in the past is that we take what's called a product life cycle approach to things. So you follow things from the moment you break ground to extract ore of some sort, or before it becomes a raw material, turn that into raw material, or turn that into a product. Product goes out to a customer. That customer uses it, and then at the end disposes of it, recycles it, or so. Industry is now looking at that entire and trying to absorb responsibility for that entire chain from cradle to grave as a concept.
And
Now,
they're required to as such, as far as I understand.
Yeah, it's
They're
become
They're been required to.
if you're going to participate and you're going to commercially distribute things, you need to own that. And that is actually a consumer set thing. It's like, I care where my food comes from, I care from who made this shirt. But the US industry today uses a ballpark 100 quads of energy, which is one of those made up numbers like trillions, where one quad is equal to something like 8 billion gallons of diesel or gasoline. The US industry uses 100. In relevance to that, or in contrast to that, I think we're on a path to about 2050. Globally, we'll have about 35 quads. We will have, as in projection, 35 quads of renewable energy on the entire planet. So it barely makes up a third from what we're currently using. Now, those 100 quads, about 40% of those, so 40 quads, this is math I can do, even in my head. About 40 of those are motors, electrical motors. So things that open and close doors, makes elevators go up and down, make conveyors move back and forth, makes your Tesla go backwards and forwards and those kinds of things. And most of those motors do not have speed control, which means that they run at a fixed speed. And for most industrial applications, that is problematic. You want speed control, so you go a little bit faster, a little bit slower. And for that reason, if you go a little bit faster, a little bit slower, appropriately, you bring down the energy consumption. So that is so many electrical motors that there's no human that sit on the bandwidth to, first of all, control the single motor, but then also to have an oversight of this amount of assets. So just a single water treatment plant like we have here in Tacoma that just takes care of our water runoff can have something like 1.2 million variables. And AI can monitor all of those and look at every energy transaction and do that little sort of 2 to 3% per transaction reductions. We're talking about almost barely a cent. But when you look at something like 40 quads of energy, they can significantly reduce the energy consumption, where we're still getting exactly the same productivity output, but we're reducing energy consumption, reducing the waste or the cost associated with it. And now if we start releasing these things on all transactions, we don't actually have to do anything different. We stand to gain such tremendous, and this is happening all over the place. I think now also when they're starting to diagnose things like breast cancer and other things, they are plowing through millions of variables and finding, they're also really good at something that we humans suck at, which is nonlinear patterns. And they pay for themselves over and over and over again, to the point that it would be, perhaps it's too early to transition, it would be unethical to not use them.
So that goes into Leslie's question.
Okay,
Let's see how AI may benefit programmers and engineers in ways that don't threaten jobs. What about non-technical jobs? Like what?
Oh, I was thinking detecting breast cancer, but I guess maybe that is a technical job, huh? There's all kinds of things out there that, right now you need an expert to be able to do things.
That is right, 70% of the time.
And because the average person can't do it. And, like, to the point of, there's a story I've told many times, but I thought I broke my toe one time, went to the doctor and he said, yeah, you broke your toe. And 2 days later called me back and said, no, you did not break your toe. He had sent the x-ray off to an expert and the expert said, no, that's not a break. If you have an AI in the doctor's office, you don't have to wait 2 days to find that out. Or maybe I have my own x-ray machine at home. And I figure it out for myself.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that AI can make every one of us better at doing things. So, and you talk about non-technical jobs. Leslie, what do you do? Oh, she maybe doesn't have a microphone?
I work in the administration of a community college. So I totally agree with what you've said for technical jobs, but I think the people who aren't sleeping at night are probably in the higher ed industry, maybe the advisors, the people who run the budget, the possibly some of the faculty, people who aren't involved in programming and engineering.
yeah,
Okay, so I
Full of all.
would say right away that they kept telling us we'd have self-driving cars any minute, but it hasn't happened. And we're not gonna have AIs that decide what the budget is in the near future either, because it's something that humans have to do. You may need fewer people doing that work, but you will need people doing that work and people who can actually tell when the AI has done something wrong. And I think that's like my theme today is that we need people who know better than AIs.
Go back to the original, it's a productivity multiplier. If you multiply by 0, it's also one of those few math things that I know, it doesn't work. You gotta multiply by 1 or 2 or 3. And again, we're 8 billion something people on the planet. But there's perhaps that it would be appropriate here to not try to just win a point, but there is a challenge, and this is a pillar of what we work in with the Industry 4.0, which is the digital transformation. So things have changed for the last 300,000 years, arguably for the better continuously. From sort of the existential minimum farming to feed yourself in the 1600s to, let's say, just recently, first industrial, second, third industrial revolution. Quality of life have gone up for everybody, now some more than others perhaps, or we are still unhappy even though we have warmth and coffee and all those, but that it's taken a little bit of time each time, so there's a window to change with the times. So to the point of like what we would do in the CTE world, the career and technical education, is like we upskill people, we reskill people or so. But now we're looking at a feedback loop that is extremely fast. And to dodge that, thankfully, Dr. Korzeniowski is a master at transformation work and organizational transformations. So that's she can add.
Yeah, I've got an example, it's outside of higher ed, but in my office the other day, the fire marshal that is for the county came around doing his inspection of our facility and came into my office. And, he looked around the office and then he saw on my desk a book that I have from UCAN, the ChatGPT book, and he was intrigued by it and started talking to me about it. And so a fire marshal is also an administrator, responsible for inspection, but also writing reports. And you could maybe translate that to an administrative role in a different organization. And what he was interested in, because he does all these inspections and at all these different facilities, but he's also accountable to public stakeholders, to his boss. And he has to provide annual reports, quarterly reports, and he says, some of my reports take months to build. I cannot wait for an AI to help me write a report where I get that time back. So it could transform his job, right? He might not have to spend so much time doing certain actions. That's what he was looking forward to in our little conversation around that book that was on my desk. And that's what he was conceptualizing as an idea to use the AI as a tool to help him be more efficient.
I think that transformation aspect is key too. Do we need to keep doing all these same jobs forever? Like we don't have milkmen anymore because we have refrigeration, we have grocery stores, we just go get it when we need it. Maybe you have 200 unread emails you need to go through. What if AI could help speed that up? Your job could transform into something that's more focused on helping support students or transform your institution.
Will AI productivity eliminate the need for the 40-hour work week? Yes, it will. That's to that point of the product life cycle, the price of the only reason, okay, so the most scarce raw material on the planet is human productivity. Everything we do as a species is for team people, and everything comes with a cost because somebody's trading in their life where they could be doing something self-fulfilling to produce something that in order to pay for being alive. And again, if we look at the last couple of 100 years, the type of price that you pay is becoming less and less, and that will continue. So you see, I mean, the accessibility, like that, a person in the United States that doesn't have it very well still lives better than European royalty did about 500 years ago in every aspect. So that trend will continue. Now, it sucks though, if I lose my job tomorrow, I'm gonna have to find a new one. So like to that point of the transformation aspect there is really important. But at the same time,
So I was just gonna say, there's been a lot of layoffs in the tech industry and
Oh, yeah.
technical fields.
they're the ones
Just
that are getting
recently
slaughtered.
in our region, around Ken and Joe, your area, around programming and the investments going into AI, Microsoft, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Do you wanna just talk about that? Cause I think that's really relevant to, you know.
Just
this
one
question.
last point
Yeah.
to switch over that. So blue collar people have for the last couple 100 years had to, there was even a politician a couple years ago that learned how to code. I think was the sort of this pin and slap back that came when people were concerned about their jobs. So we've kind of been picking on people doing application and integration work. People who work with their hands that facilitate things to turn them into action, into things. You need to just change with the times. This is the first time in human history that people who sit at desks or work with papers or work with thinking have gotten a little bit of competition because this is not really broken out. And they're like, boo-hoo, change everything. This has to stop. So I mean, it's a little bit also there just to sober up the conversation is like, there's never been that kind of, you know, that kind of sentiment where stop all progress because the conveyors of the Ford plants in the 20s came to be, or any changes has been, I mean, even to the point where using that, you know, we're leaving punch cards, you better pick up this next language, you better pick up this next language, this new software. So for the first time, we're coming for people that have been sheltered for even, and especially us here, like academics are in grave danger. And now it's like, you better change. Now, I'm sorry, this is the first time you have to do this. Yes, it's very uncomfortable. And we have to coddle that a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's also happened in the tech industry, right?
Yeah.
The layoffs there that happened about a year ago, mass layoffs for programmers, computer scientists. Any comments on that?
Yeah, AI can speed up retraining. If I want to learn a new programming language, it's normally go read a bunch of documentation, try to memorize some of these things, or constantly be Googling and looking things up. But now I can have more of a conversation. I can use my logic skills, and students can do that too. One thing that really frustrates our students and people in general learning programming is syntax. You forget a semicolon or you forget a parenthesis, and people get angry. Some of our students will come in and I've been stuck on this for 3 hours. I can't figure it out. I hate programming. And then Ken and I can just look at it. Oh, you missed a parenthesis. but why doesn't AI do that part of our job? We can transform that. We could upskill them. They could retrain to new languages or new types of programming. Carl wants us to help them work on software for things like robotics. I'm not a.
Well, I think that's the thing is, so you guys as traditional software engineers or programmers had a heck of a time landing that first job, going from a limited portfolio to an application portfolio. And then with these massive layoffs, at the same time on the industry side, so I mentioned in the beginning what mechatronics contained software engineering, but there is room for, so you guys are kicking off a cyber physical software engineer, basically a computer science focused on application integration, tangible things out of the software engineer skill set or computer science skill set. And there's a night and day difference where you can walk into a six-figure job with very limited traditional experience, because again, you have a portfolio that shows the application, that shows that you can be productive. We got a permanent leisure class, no, that's not gonna happen either. For every hour you lose of work, unfortunately, you're gonna have to fill that now with, we use Maslow's hierarchy of needs, self-actualization and self-fulfillment. And unfortunately, that has been so rare in human history that we don't have any precedents to study and learn from. So we're also looking at an existential crisis of having to be human. So humans are playful, creative, social. So unfortunately, we're gonna have to figure out how can I do those things and find happiness, because you can bury yourself in work and escape reality. Like you can go into that little squirrel wheel and hide, and those days are disappearing.
Well, Allison, for your question, I would say that we're probably gonna create jobs for people in that area. She asks, do people know how to self-actualize? No.
No.
That's why there's a lot of people now offering to help you do that kind of thing, and I think that'll be a bigger service area in the future. So, you know, you can, I attended a talk yesterday, I don't know if any of you did, Kerry Bergeron, where do we go from here? He talked about how, from industry 1.0 to industry 2.0, and how all kinds of technologies changed and people lost jobs. But it seems to me that for every person who puts shoes on a horse that doesn't have a job anymore, you had a person who could work on cars. Now you're gonna need people who can work on people.
Yeah. And this is harder because the transition from shoes on a horse to a car is a technical solution to a technical problem. Because what do I need to do in a very obvious sort of productivity measure? You're starting to deal, so we're seeing where the transactional relationships are disappearing, and we're seeing how you cannot just, everything is not a technical solution anymore, it's an adaptive solution, and that is very, very difficult. And we kind of lost our ways because again, it's been so hard to stay alive. And I mean, we can take something that hits close to home as well. I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. If this keeps up, they will beat K-12 in about 2 years. And now, I mean, our entire society is structured on that they are busy, kept busy and out of our hair, and not out and hoodlumming around and causing trouble. So it's things like that where, and that's a harder one also, because that needs to be a human that keeps their eyes on the little human. Now, if I use these productivity tools appropriately, I should have more time to be a father, but will society, will culture, will my own predispositions allow me to do that without being suspicious that I'm doing something wrong, because we've never done this before, or we have forgotten what it's like. But to that point of the adaptability, that's also something you're really good at.
Yeah. I think there's an opportunity there to adopt a different mindset. We often talk, especially in education, get to graduation. We really work hard for completion. We are funded on completion. And then we have this culture around, then you're done.
Forever.
But with the digital transformation, the adopting the learn, unlearn, and relearn mindset is absolutely critical. Now, that might be couched as, ongoing learning or, always wanting to learn, but there's more to say around, we do push as a culture that graduation, you're done. You don't have to learn anymore. There's no new technical skills you need or interpersonal skills you need, but I would like to challenge us that we need to start talking about adaptive skills and being adaptive with the use of an AI or other technologies. And to do that, you have to start to adopt a learn and relearn mindset. Because nobody has arrived to the point of actualize and to realize and be self-actualized. Are you ever there, right? There's always something to learn, unlearn, and relearn. So it is a great loss if you lose a job, right? You've been trained, you went trained through the university, you were an engineer, and you lose that job to technology. Perhaps it wouldn't be so fearful if we had a learn, unlearn, relearn sort of mindset in there, that there's opportunities to learn something new and to add that. I think you all see individuals in your classes for that, people who are laid off or they want to pivot or do other things. And they're adapting, they have that adaptive mindset.
Yeah, so with so we don't, in the mechatronics field, we don't teach the technologies at all. We're not going to teach you how to use a particular software, a particular piece of hardware. So and that's Claire, you introduced to me a concept about transferable skills. So there's a lot of talk about socio-emotional skill sets, known as soft skills and under various names. But there's a whole discipline of transferable skills as well, which is that what can I keep the same sort of as a baseline through this learn, unlearn, relearn as well. We're pivoting towards that. But we see a tremendous sort of change every 6 months. So most of my courses survive about 6 months before they have to be significantly rewritten because of how quick this moves. So that's like under your mentorship there to bring these things in, and then we just transfer that to our customers, the students. And again, we don't factor, like, it doesn't matter why they came here. It's like, what do you need? So we have people that are coming from sort of grocery stores or coming from floral arrangement, like all these different job paths that are either bringing automation into their fields that are really good at, or they're transitioning out of it. Or I've done this for 20 years now. I want to do something different. I'm just like, this seems nice. Yeah.
Again, I'd like to turn to you. You talk a lot about the fundamentals and why that's really important to know fundamentals in being a computer programmer.
Yeah. I wonder if we want to first, though, address Allison's comment. Seems like our productivity and culture has denigrated the arts and creativity for so long, it's going to be a struggle. And AI is not going to help in that area, it seems to me, in that, right now, there's a lot of concern out in Hollywood. They workers there got contracts saying that they're not allowed to use AI in making movies in certain ways. And your basic artist is maybe not necessary anymore if you just have an AI draw you an image that you want. So all right, what you were saying about the basics, this is what got me started on that, is that if you can get from AI an adequate picture to support your purpose, why do you hire an artist? And how does an artist get up to the level where they can actually sell products, sell things that they make, if they can't get it from the basics? And earlier we were talking about how AI will make programmers more productive, meaning they don't have to do the basics anymore on their own, but you still have to know them. So I think we do have a problem, I think, in that we've got to make sure we don't lose the basics, because how do you know whether something did something right or not? It's been a while now, so I want to say a bad thing about AI, but I think it's probably not there anymore. A student of mine, not knowing how to do one basic operation that we explain in like computer programming 101, looked it up on Bing, the AI. This was Bing Chat or whatever it was. It was years ago though. And this And where it should have had a loop, it had an if statement. And if you know anything about what's being involved in that particular operation, you would know that an if statement was inappropriate there. But if you don't know that, you think, oh, it's good. It was input validation is what it was. And they go, oh, look, they actually checked to make sure that the input was valid. But in fact, if somebody's gonna do something wrong, maybe you've done this too, you do it wrong 3 or 4 times before you finally get it right. And so you need a loop to process that. And if you don't understand these basics, you're not gonna be able to use AI to do your code. So that was a real wandering kind of explanation, sorry.
Well, no, but I know the two of you kind of sit on two different sides in your instruction in terms of AI and how you teach individuals to use that as a tool. And so Ken, you believe in the fundamentals, you start teaching the fundamentals. And Joe, you teach individuals how to use the fundamentals and apply those to create something, create a product,
Yep.
right?
Yep, so in our program, Ken and I both have teaching an associate degree program for computer programming. I tell all the students, he's going to make you think like a programmer, I will make you productive like a programmer. So Ken doesn't use the fancy tools I use. I use professional development environments, it has autocomplete in there, I show them AI Q1. But I've also seen the downsides of relying on AI too much and not really hammering in those fundamentals. I've had students come up to me and say, well, AI couldn't figure this out. And I tell them, well, AI could code anything in our program. If you can't get it to get the right output, you don't know the fundamentals well enough to prompt those AIs to get that code that you need. So now what I do is the first couple quarters, we'll use AI more like an on-demand tutor. So I tell them, you can always come to me for questions, but people are always shy or they don't want to seem stupid. They always apologize. Sorry for bugging you, or sorry for asking this question. And doesn't matter how many times I say, that's part of my job, you're paying me to do that, they're still gonna apologize. They have an on-demand tutor that can answer a lot of our basic questions they run into.
And the reasoning behind it,
Mhm.
actually, which is pretty neat. So it is on us to, and it's a beautiful thing about application integration rather than information, which is that if you teach towards an application or the integration of an application, which basically means that there's going to be a tangible action in the real world. A person will factor in that this is gonna happen now. It will manifest itself. It's not a concept, it's not an idea. This is now something real. And I'm gonna be held accountable to it. So now well, first of all, they feel a sense of responsibility, but they also then feels a sense of empowerment. And they will start to look at these as actual tools rather than something that replaces them. So I want to do a good job on this. I want this to look nice. I want it to make the person that is using this happy. How do I do that so that it doesn't look crummy, that I can put my name on it, be proud of it? And then these things become tools rather than it doesn't solve the problem for you. It multiplies you, it makes you shine, it makes you perform to a point where you are happy with your own performance. And that, if we think back to what it can be like to be new at a job, so like Joe was saying, you have this tutor, you have this thing that can boost your self-confidence and help you find your place in these new areas. And as this is changing so fast, everybody is in that same spot. So to kind of segue to Dan's question there, to the empathy of a person near retirement. If you're born after 1975, I'm firmly convinced you're not going to be allowed to retire ever. That's how few people we have on the planet. That might not seem like it, but when you're stuck in traffic on the I-5 or so, but we don't have enough people. This is a very serious problem. And what we need to help that person, and this is something we spend a lot of time on the methods rather than technology. We have a concept around digital empathy, which is like you're now interacting with thousands of people that you cannot meet because you're multiplying yourself. So you need to be empathetic to all of those people's experiences. Like, how do I do that? How do I make sure that each one of those feels taken care of like they interacted with me? So Joe brings up that people are apologetic for asking us when they should actually be demanding things from us. So like, how do we transition that? And a person like that needs to be helped have an empathetic response where, yes, if you want to stay in 2024, it's not gonna happen. You're gonna have to change for things that's painful, as scary, and we need to spend a lot of time coddling that person to look forward, to move forward. But nobody's being bumped out of the job market unless they are trying to stay in a job market that no longer exists. And I'm not joking, like, keep that in mind. You will not be allowed to retire.
I don't know if I like that idea, but.
Neither do I. It's,
I especially having been born before 75,
you're not allowed to retire either. Like, you're a key competency here.
So, one time I went to do a job interview at Amazon, and the guy I'm interviewing with me says, well, I'm assuming you don't know anything about unit testing. And they said, I teach that. And he was like, what? You know, he was quite a bit younger than me, and assumed that because I was older than him, that I didn't know a new concept, what he considered a new concept. It actually wasn't a new concept at that time, but I think it was for him. But I think, Dan, I agree with you, that this is the perception anyway, that, older people, have to give way to younger people because, what was the term you used? Disruptive technology, that they're not gonna catch up to that. And I think people do that if they can. You know, I think, for example, my mom never, ever used a computer, so, you know, she didn't have to. So, but I think if you're in a job, you're gonna wanna learn new things along the way. But that if that's true, then we've got what Carl says, then there's job security for the next, 1,000 years or something.
Easily.
Because the world population is only gonna decline.
My goal is to replace myself. I swear it, like, if I don't have to go to work and I can trust that it's being done, please, that's, so because we have it, so we thought that everything was solved. We have digital natives and digital immigrants, and that's it. We have today kids, I'm calling them kids, but 16, 17-year-olds in computer literacy classes with 55-year-olds. This is actually a huge problem on our side, where it wasn't that easy. We thought we had a technical solution to an adaptive problem, and our million times meet that, or I mean, it literally needs to be 1.1 or something, like anything. But that's a huge problem. And
I'd like to also start to transition our conversation to the ethics portion of AI and the ethics around using and teaching individuals to use an AI. You know, we can imagine with the use of AI to help us as a partner in becoming more productive and more efficient and effective. And yet it's also my understanding, if I understand through you all and your wisdom and what I have read, that AI is also, it works based off of the individuals, the humans that build it.
unfortunately, yes.
Also, yeah. And in our division, we talk a lot about digitalism and its impact on humanity, on our human judgment, empathy, creativity, and problem solving. Walk us through the ethical implications of the adoption of AI. And is it ethical to teach, or is it unethical to not teach it?
The biggest problem is the data set that you use to train an AI. An AI isn't by itself designed to do things right or wrong.
So before you go deeper into it, just really quick, so what an AI actually is a probability machine. So like Ken says, you train them. That means that you put data into them where you say that this and this equals this. This and this equals this. And then it looks at that, and then it looks for patterns in that. So very simple, y equals x plus 2. So if we give it that x is 2, y becomes 4, and so forth. And then when you give it an unknown x, it uses that to try to figure out what the probability of the answer is. Now that's a linear AI and a waste of time. But the data set then becomes like, it looks for patterns in that data set and tells you the probability of the next thing or of these things going in, this should come out. Okay. Just so they.
I thought your loan application story was a
Yeah.
perfect example
Yeah.
of this.
Of an ethical,
Okay.
yeah. That's
So-
very good.
Classic example that we teach. So first of all, like getting these data sets is very difficult. We have actually run out of data on the planet to train AI. So there's big talks about synthetic data, which is made up. But it was a mortgage company that took a couple of decades worth of loan applications and mortgage applications and fed us a training set into an AI with the goal of that you've put in your information on a website and it will approve you for a mortgage. Like that, and it doesn't cost a whole bunch, but again, it increases the accessibility to this. It will be more fair because like people have biases or so. And what I noticed was that when you turned this thing on, the first thing it did, it was denied about 2 million applications for mortgages with anybody that could have any relationship to a Latin American heritage, be it a last name or any, really picked on people from Latin America. So they panicked and turned it off. So what it had found was a dormant pattern of cultural and racial discrimination towards people of a Latin heritage in all of these applications. And this is what they were really good at because it could find the patterns where somebody would deny somebody based upon, well, it was your credit or it was, something that they would mask that denial. And also a person cannot process very many applications. So if a supervisor looks at this person's record, it can be difficult to see that there's a pattern here. Anybody who's called Espinoza, you don't allow them a mortgage because that's the AI found it immediately and went to town with it. And this is normally taught as a warning of look how dangerous AIs are. My approach to that, as we teach it here in this building, is that no, an AI will do what the intent of the people who created it is. So take that same AI, apply it to an institution to look for institutional racism. There you go. It will filter out people immediately. Like, look at this person who taught this or teaches that. Look at the grade point averages here or so. That would clean house immediately. So you have one that denies mortgages, which is very unfavorable. One that can find these patterns that can be extremely difficult.
I think that's a
Okay.
unmuted mic on their side there.
So that's the mortgage.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there are, you probably are familiar with facial recognition programs that don't work very well either. And that's one that's on the news quite frequently.
So how do you teach the ethics of AI? And is it ethical for you as an instructor to teach those skills?
I think from a computer programming perspective, we have to, that's the way our industry has shifted. But there is a lot of gray areas, like the data sets it's trained on, some of the data is old. So one thing we ran into a couple of weeks ago, I was asking the AI a question and it said, you can't do that in C#. And I told it, yes, you can. I've seen it before, I've done it before. And it went, oh, I'm sorry, yeah, you can,
Yeah, you have to argue with them.
yeah. But
So you had to know that, you had to have the fundamentals in that to know that it's actually true,
Yep.
that you can do that.
Yeah, we still have to keep up with our education, because things do change and the AI, if it doesn't have enough quality data, it's not gonna get those.
How do you teach responsible use of an AI in your course?
So that is something our industry is still discussing too. So what Microsoft does with a company they bought called GitHub, their AI is trained on a bunch of existing code, but it will actually warn you if it copies code from the data set it was trained on. So it'll say, hey, this is an exact copy of somebody else's code, use it at your own risk. So they're trying to build some safety into these mechanisms, like, hey, is copying code okay with your company or in this particular use case? But they have done studies and they show, I think it's like 99.1% of all the code generated is new. It's not a copy, which is pretty incredible. But we have to be thinking about that as builders of these technologies. If we don't build safety into them or look for biases, they are a productivity multiplier. Instead of denying one mortgage application, it's 2 million. So, yeah.
What do you think?
In computer programming in particular, for many, many years, it's been easy to cheat on student assignments because there are all these companies out there, websites that make profit off of knowing how to do assignments out of textbooks. And so they'll just post every assignment that ever existed in any textbook. And so it's really easy to cheat. All AI does is make it faster. You don't have to look quite as hard and as long to find the answer now. It just happened to me this week. I have a whole bunch of students who turned something in that I know all of them turned in exactly the same thing. All of them don't understand what that is. And
How did you know they didn't understand? What was the indicator?
okay, so it's on linked lists, which are a rather abstract, hard concepts. And I've seen the work that they do themselves when I'm in the lab. And then they come up and it's the very last problem in the textbook, the most difficult one of all, the one that can't wrap my head around hardly. It takes me a while to figure it out. And yet they all turn that in as their work when I ask them a simpler question. It's a general formula for something, but I gave them a specific instance, which would be actually easy to do for anybody. But instead of doing what I asked them to do, they did this general algorithm that solves any size problem. And so no, they didn't come up with that on their own.
So what's your plan to address that as a faculty member? And
So-
I know that's a challenge, right?
So
Yeah.
this was an online quiz in Canvas, and I deducted points for having done that, and I explained to each and every student in their personal little response area why I knew they had not done that work themselves.
Mhm.
And I will be talking about that on Tuesday in the class
Mhm.
and talking further about it.
About responsible use of the
Yeah,
tools.
right.
Yeah.
Looks like we're out of time. Just real quickly though, I also just changed how I grade my homework assignments. So now you don't turn in
Yeah.
code, you explain it. And if you cheated, you can't explain it.
And
So-
maybe we could wrap up with Johnny's last question there. If we all would just maybe make a comment there around, can you address the overall resilience of AI and
Reliance.
a reliance and sustainability?
Sustainability, can we, I'm not sure what we mean for AI sustainability, what that is.
It's a subjective term.
So what is that to you, Carl?
So sustainability would be any action that you can perpetually keep up at forever, like you can keep doing it and it will not be interrupted. So over-reliance, right now people are using them as curiosities. So people play with AIs a lot, but it's we've never had this opportunity to actually bring about, if we want to talk about sustainability as in that all of us can have a fantastic life and not at the expense of the people that come after us. AIs are the first opportunity that we have to actually make that happen because they can deal with the complexities, the nonlinear patterns and the resource management and release us from that as well. So we can focus on having a fantastic life for 70, 80 years if we're lucky. While not doing so at deterministic price of the ones that come after us.
Any final
Ronald says
comments?
we're at time,
Okay.
so.
Well, thank you, Ronald, and for hosting and helping us on the back end. Thank you, audience, for being here and for the commenters, and we appreciate your time.
All right, thank you all. That was a very insightful discussion and future podcast episode somewhere. Yeah, let's give a round of applause for our Clover Park Collective coming out to present. Thank you guys. Thank you all
Good to
for
see you,
doing that.
Don.
Thank you, everybody.
Snowy, good to see you. Thanks for coming to our talk.